Hello, everyone. I am Brooks Alden. Welcome to another Your Best Match online show. And this one has a Valentine's theme. That's why we called it Love, Find Somebody to Love. And if you remember, that was some lyrics by Jefferson Airplane. Find somebody to love, got to find somebody to love, want somebody to love. So we all want to find somebody to love, have somebody to love. And we're doing these shows because many people are struggling with dating, relationships, love, and intimacy. We've had some great speakers, and we have two more speakers today that will be sharing. And this is Dr. Elsbeth and Freddie. They have assisted thousands of couples and singles create lasting intimacy and fulfillment in their life and relationships. They are featured on Showtime's documentary series Sexual Healing and the Emmy Award-winning NBC show Starting Over. Best-selling authors of Sexual Enlightenment, endorsed by world-renowned spiritual pioneer Dr. Michael Beckwith, and the co-founders of Tantra Nova Institute in Chicago. They have coached billionaires, innovators, and power couples all over the world, sharing their intimacy secrets at a global Young Presidents Organization conference in the city of Love, Paris, and got nominated as Changemaker at the White House-sponsored 2016 United States of Women Summit in Washington, D.C. Elsbeth and Freddie are beloveds, husband and wife, as well as business partners residing in Chicago. And you guys have been doing this, I read somewhere, you guys have been doing this like 20 years, right?
23 years, Brooks, 20 years.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad to have you here. Do you guys have anything you would want to say before I get started with the questions I want to ask you?
Great to be here again. Good to see you. You look great.
Yeah, really great to see you and to be with you.
Thank you. It's good to be with you guys. And so in the topic of your title or your interview, creating intimacy and love. Wow, creating it rather than going out there and finding it. How do you, just additional something I want to ask, how do you create intimacy and love?
Well, I want to say too, let me just say, Alan, it's always right beneath everything is this intimacy, and it's just remembering what we've forgotten. And as we practice some of the practices that we are talking about here today, then we remind ourselves and become more familiar and accessible to that intimacy. Into me, I see. So it's always there.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
And that leads to what you just brought up, instead of finding love or falling into love, how about creating consciously intimacy and love? And it starts with ourselves, just as Freddie said, into me, I see intimacy, because whatever radiates from me, I am attracting. So if I have doubts, if I'm good enough or that I can find the right partner, if I feel I'm not worthy, or if I come from a place of I need someone in order to be happy, to be fulfilled, that is what I radiate.
Mhm.
And unless I fill myself, unless I'm fulfilled within myself, nobody else can fulfill me. That may be a feeling for a little while when we have fallen in love, because the hormones are high and I can only see the best in him. I'm looking at him with some rose-colored glasses, and then when that may lessen, when the hormones go down, I start perhaps seeing more his flaws or
a pimple here or there. What's that over there?
So then, and not to fall in love, which is wonderful. The question here is, how can I be the space of love, the space of fulfillment, the space of happiness within, so that I can bring in, attract, be the invitation to the other for love, you know? And so I just worked yesterday with a client where we looked at that, you know, we have our list, how we want another to be, the one that we want to find. And we are often externally oriented. But what makes the really distinct difference is when I shift internally. And I actually went through my own experience there before I was with Freddie, and, you know, needed to clear some stuff in myself, which had to do with being attracted to unavailable men. And fortunately, I cleared that before I met Freddie, because then when I met Freddie, I was open, I was truly available, not like looking for something that was not going to be available to me. And, you know, he was available. And fortunately, I had cleared myself of that unavailability pattern so I could see him. And, you know, I
She
was
created it.
open.
She saw me. It's like you don't notice red cars until you have one. So she set herself up subconsciously to bring in the beloved, and then there I was, and I was available. Whereas in the past, it would have been she wanted on the front side consciously, but unconsciously, no, 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 you can't trust men. You know, so that's what I was saying in terms of just beneath what our stories are, the way we look into the world, our, you know, processes of just having learned and been modeled and experienced. We look into the world from those places. But the good news is that we can also start to tap in as a curious observer to ourselves as clay to move with grace, ease, and flow towards whatever, in this case, intimacy and connection, which is right there. And once I start thinking and feeling that and believing that, that's what starts to show up.
Wow. How do you initially get ready yourself? You know, it seems like a number of speakers are speaking on removing blocks, you know, from love, what's keeping us from finding that person. How do you initially do what you're referring to, Elsbeth, as far as being ready inside, you know, or inner person?
Yes. So why this removal of blocks or blind spots or subconscious beliefs, you know, why that is so important has to do with that we can look at two people like two instruments. You know, when a cello and a violin play together, or any instrument, an oboe and a clarinet, if they are off tune, there is a dissonance between them. It's not pleasant to listen to. And we are like instruments. We vibrate at a certain pitch, so to speak, you know? And if I vibrate at the pitch of self-doubt, or like this subconscious belief I held before I met Freddie, that for me was to be discovered, which I discovered through the tantric healing, my tantric healing, was that I had the subconscious belief, a decision I made when I was 18 years old, that men are never there for me when I need them. And that was so when I was 18. However, then it trailed me throughout all the way into my adult life. And I lived in my relationship from that place of, there are never there for you, Elspeth, when you really need them. That was not a conscious mind up here. So I didn't think about it, I didn't analyze it, and I couldn't change it. But underneath, we call it the memory on the cellular level. That is where it still was hooked. And for me, it was essential to clear that subconscious belief. And fortunately, the tantric healing helped me in that, because in the tantric healing, we tap really into the whole being, the physical being, the emotional being, the energetic being, the sexual, sensual being, the mental being, all at once as a gestalt. And there we can come to places within ourselves that are not accessible from the conscious mind. And that is what I healed, what I cleared, so that I did not have to walk around any longer with that, men are not there for you, Elspeth. No, men are here for me. Here is one, but that is an example. And so I shifted my pitch from that belief that men are not there for me to the pitch of, oh, I can trust. I can trust myself. I can trust men. And then Freddie came into my life. I can be open to this man. And he definitely was open to me. So then he was a reflection. I no longer attracted an availability, unlike the way I had done before it.
What did you notice, if anything, after you made that shift? After you dealt with that, or got rid of that inner thing that was hindering
It
you?
was, yeah, a very practical change that I did then consciously. Because once I saw where I was coming from, not trusting, and clearing this out, not just in thinking, but also in feeling and in my physical body, then for one thing, I started trusting. It fills you up, it's a vibrational thing when we shift into trust. And out of that healing, I decided to never ever go along when a man who is not available would approach me for intimate connection, because otherwise I would just be doing the same thing. So once we shift the belief, we need to have our behavior and actions be coherent with that new belief. So in this case, before I met Freddie, I remember I met Freddie in the summer of 2001. And right before, like a month before, I had met another man at a seminar. He came from out of town and we had a really great time together. Then he flew off a couple of days later. And so I waited for 3 days. I didn't hear from him. I got a little anxious, that familiar anxiousness. And so then I just called him up and was very open. I said, what is it that you want in our relationship? And he said, I don't want to create relationship. I don't want to have a committed relationship at this time in my life. I'm focused on my business. And at first it was like a little bit, this uncomfortable feeling, but I thanked him for his honesty. And it took me another couple of days just to clear that out. There was no residue. And I said, okay, Elspeth, move forward, because he is not in line what you want. He gave you a gift.
Yeah.
So I moved on, not being sad about that he didn't want to be with me, not hanging out there and, feeling sorry for myself. No, I shifted. 4 weeks later, Freddie came into my life. So I believe that the actions and behaviors we then implement once we shift a belief are essential.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, we can get actionable insights in a lot of ways, therapy, nature walks, and see something. It's the ambivalence of the action that we want to shift, because that's the unconscious saboteur of our most deeply desired things we want to create. We're our own self-fulfilling prophecy. So in the sexual meditation, which we talked about in your other episodes, which this is part of, we work with the altered state of what happens in the sexual experience. Whether you're doing consciousness work or not, with the distinctions that we would introduce to one, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're changed, more endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin. We're in an altered state. So with intention, I want to create intimacy and relationship. We can get more connected to what we don't see running in the background, which has been the antithesis of that feeling. And oftentimes it might go back to a story. We might get in touch with an early childhood story, or it's a vibration or a frequency, and we can start to recognize that. And then we can start to move in and dream into what we want to feel, how we want to feel in that intimate state. letting go in that intimate state of what's kept us locked, and then move in that intimate state consciously towards how we want to feel. And that becomes a familiar, accessible, distinctive feeling that we keep vibrating. And then that's how we're looking into our life, how we are interpreting our experience. And that's how we start bringing in the most deeply desired wishes and dreams and hopes of our lives.
And this is so great that you brought that up, because the healing that we spoke about earlier, my tantric healing, can happen on different dimensions within our human being. The healing through our sexual self, where we may not be in harmony, or the heart perhaps calls for healing because the heart got disappointed and then doesn't trust anymore. Or our thoughts, shifting our thoughts, beliefs, interpretations, how we look into the world. And so what's so great about the tantric practice is that we also get to tap into the sexual. And for me, it was a healing of my sex and my heart, because I had separated them. When I got disappointed when I was 18 years old and the boyfriend left, I became quite, promiscuous. And so I took on a way of being with boys or young men at that time, which was like getting love through sex, because that was easy to come by. But getting love was not so easy. But then integrating my heart and my sex, my sexual center, my yoni, my sacred space, that is what then the opening produced, so that I could clear myself and then, be open to Freddie's love.
Wow, Tantra is so powerful. I mean, that's just amazing stuff. And am I understanding it somewhat? I mean, I'm bite my lip trying to just be quiet and listen and not say, well, what about you? And go up on all these tangents. But it sounds like you're kind of saying that by acting, using after we've made these shifts and changes our beliefs or and feelings, we use our consciously we choose new actions to kind of make that part of us and make our inner person align with that new belief. Is that
Yeah,
something like?
once you set up the subconscious, you have to have actionable beliefs, actionable actions,
Yeah.
steps to bring it into the conscious world. So once you set the subconscious up to receive, then you've got to have action steps in this physics that lead you to creating. It's the ambivalence of that action step that keeps people often from creating what they want. Oh, I'm going to go get on Tinder. Oh, I wanted to meet that person, but I didn't. Or I met that person, but there's all these, but, or, only ifs. And we're looking for the worst thing to satisfy our subconscious. But once we set that subconscious up, then we become more receptive to the reality of our actions.
Yeah, and the subconscious drives everything. We are not even aware of it. However, that runs the show. And what we are just talking about is that we tap into the subconscious, and we can do this through different modalities. The most important thing is to tap into the subconscious, particularly when we want something and we seem to not be able to get it. It feels like there's something in the way. I know I want it, but it just doesn't come to me. It doesn't happen for me. I cannot find that person, that there is something in the way that eludes us. And that is we tap into the subconscious through particular processes. They are not rocket science, but we want to know, what these processes are, because some of them are very powerful and work really the way we work with our clients and students is really to support them in producing shifts with great velocity so that they don't have to hang out anymore in that subconscious belief that sabotages them, or the incoherent action. They say they want something, but then they do the opposite. I need, as you said, to have our actions and behavior coherent with what we want. If my intention and my actions are not aligned, then the universe doesn't know what it's supposed to listen for, the intention or the action.
And that's how you speed it up, is by getting those actions that are in alignment with your new.
That's how you bring it forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just speed it up. Yeah. Speed it up and bring it forward, because this is usually something that's been a consistent wish or hope or desire that had never seems to happen for someone. And that's what we've seen for a lot of people. And this has been maybe years this has gone on. And so what is it that keeps us from creating our life? Nothing other than ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
So when we speak about consciously creating, means that we want to explore what lives subconsciously within me that runs the show, however, that I cannot see. Because that can work against me. And usually these beliefs and these, memories on the cellular level, they were created, when we were born as an infant, that we had experiences where we had to protect ourselves. While our mind is not fully developed, still we have emotions and feelings, and then, closing off, just like an animal would close off to protect itself. Or when we were 5 years old and our dad didn't come home one night, and then we start thinking, oh, now he doesn't love me anymore. He just perhaps was in an accident, who knows? But that is, and then we live our life from that place. I'm not loved. It sounds so simple on one hand, but it's not. When it plays out in our life, it really is very impactful. And unless we clear that, we are not free.
And it can be very sad to think we're living our whole life for 20, 30, 40 years by being so influenced by that, what happened. That
Yeah. And it's the case for all of us. I mean, we, experience these experiences and we kind of look into the world from that place.
And the discovery doesn't stop. It's not, oh, when I hit 50, I'm done. No, I'm 74 now. I have new discoveries. I mean, all the time. Now, I'm very aware, and if something is off, I no longer want to hang around with it. I'm just not willing to live that life in misery or suffering. So, I just go inside or ask Freddie to support me in a clearing process. So it's there, and the more we see, the more we open, the more we can see. The more I have cleared, the more I see the subtleties.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Well, one question I want to make sure I ask you is, uh, what's the difference between falling in love versus creating love?
Hmm. Well, falling in love is what happens when we first meet someone and they smell the way we like them to smell and they look the way we want them to look and they fit all the emotional and social and educational and financial prerequisites. And that's, and it's like the first few, months or years, it might be like, oh, darling, I just love the smell of your armpits and your toes and your toe jams. I just love it. After about 3 years, you need to take a bath, okay? You need to shower it up. And so how do we recreate, the feeling of connection and the senior commitment of being love? So that requires us getting out of a lot of the story making that we do and a lot of the ego stuff and a lot of the old stuff from experiences from childhood, really. Once someone becomes family, then that's a deep story, right? So we have to continue to be vigilant with ourselves in doing practices that assist us in being present and curious about this clay that we look into the world from to keep moving towards what we are consciously wanting to create, and say, in this case, love and connection in relationship. When she says or does something that triggers you to a place that we aren't even aware of where it came from. When my mother used to yell at me and she does something and then I'm triggered, but I think it's because of what she did. And the main key, Brooks, is for us all to continue to practice owning our upsets. Not that we might not have a request or a something to ask of the person, yet the charge, the upset is mine to own.
Okay.
You know, she may be yelling at me about something and then I get deeply triggered
Me?
about it. No, 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 no. Anyone in relationship yelling at you about something.
Yeah, or get angry with you.
Yeah, whatever it might be that triggers you deeply, to own that trigger. And then we can start to look at, okay, well, what is that? Because we start drilling it back. It's very rarely is it a thing that happened in that moment. It's something that's deeply triggering from the past. And so we can start to flatten that, and we get a little distance, and then we can approach it differently, make a request or not, or respond in however appropriate way we want to.
So then falling in love, what we want to learn, Brooks, is to, what was it when we felt that way? Because we don't know what we did when we fell in love. It just felt good. So we cannot replicate it later when it may be really great to know, how could I bring a little bit more spice or more connection or compassion into my relationship? So this is why we suggest already when we go into relationship, when we are open to bring a beloved into our life, when we are open, to start dating, that we look at what is going on over here and what are the distinctions for creating intimacy and love, and what practices do I want to learn so that I can live this every day, no matter if I just fell in love with Freddie or 23 years later, when we know each other quite well. There's also an aspect of, having become more used to each other. You know each other so well that you are used to each other. You all sometimes take each other for granted. And that is really an enemy of love, being in love, having a joyous life together. So the practices that we have developed in our work are assisting people, individuals, singles, as well as couples, to create intimacy and love consciously, so that this is available, that this is embodied, like the body knows it, the nervous system knows it, the mind is set up for it. So when Freddie gets angry, I then can have trained myself to just stay grounded. It requires training. Because at times, we get angry. But if I respond, or let's say better, react to Freddie's anger, because that instinctively reminds me of my dad who had a violent anger. It's an energy that comes over me. It's not about Freddie, but that gets set off. If I go into that place, I either want to withdraw, or I want to defend myself, or I freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. Instead of that, I can cultivate a state of being where I can stay grounded in myself, use the conscious belly breath, the parasympathetic, diaphragmatic breath, so that I can stay present. And then I can be in my witness, in that watcher, that observer, and say, okay, Freddie is going through something right now. And let me just be there and then see if he's open to share more what he's concerned about. And sometimes it's not the moment to talk. Then I just say, darling, what about if we talk about what bothers you later? And then leaving a little time so that we can come together. But that requires training on my side. And that is what Freddie is referring to when he says, own your own upset. If in the situation when Freddie gets upset, and I use it as a reason to get upset too, it's my upset.
And I have to own my original upset. I mean, if everybody's owning their upsets, then we can have fewer upsets and more really deep, conversations and sharing.
And love connection.
And more love connection.
Yes.
Right.
You mean I can't blame it on her?
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
you can, but that
It
it's a
gets you
lot.
nowhere. It just keeps you stuck. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah.
I agree. I agree. From experience, that doesn't work. Well, we're keeping these interviews to a certain time so we can throw
Oh,
everything. Uh,
oh,
yeah, but you guys have been great. Thanks for sharing. I do want to make sure I give time for you to share what the gift you have for everybody.
yes. So we want to leave you, the listener, the watcher, right now with a gift that is called Creating Intimacy and Love. It's a video class, a DVD that you can download, and it will teach you a couple of the practices that are foundational to connect with myself, to listen to myself, so that I can become the one who can stay grounded, who can be, centered when there is upheaval, when there is chaos, when there is anger in the space. Also, listening to myself where I may want to be heard more, and from there I can make requests. So these are foundational practices that allow us to come into a state of peace, centeredness, and groundedness so that we can be fully present and available in relationship, be that a dating relationship or going on a date for the first time or being in a long-term relationship. They apply to any situation.
Well, yeah, Tantra is so amazing, so amazing. Another free gift I gotta get. That's good stuff. But thanks so much for sharing, Elsbeth and Freddie. We all appreciate it. Thanks for being in the show. And everyone that's been watching, thank you for watching and stay tuned. There will be another speaker / expert coming up in just 5 minutes or less. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.